The success of the book Voices of Jackson Street and the exhibition inspired Jamal to take further steps. The house, which was a symbol of family memory, has now become a center for many people who sought to preserve their heritage. But every day, Jamal felt more and more strongly that their efforts were not enough. He saw how many stories remained forgotten, how many family archives are covered with dust in attics, and after all, each of these stories could become not just a memory, but also a lesson for future generations. One evening, sitting on the porch of the house with Mabel, he finally decided to discuss his idea with her.
Grandma, I keep thinking about our exhibition. It was something incredible, but I have one thought all the time. We could have done more. Do you remember those people who came to us and told us about their families? They want to keep their stories too.
Of course I remember. One woman even brought me a picture of her great-grandmother. She said that no one had seen her in the last 40 years. It touched me to the core. But what do you mean when you say do more?
I'm thinking about the foundation, something like an organization that would help people preserve their heritage. We could offer assistance in restoring photographs, recording stories, and creating archives. And not only here on Jackson Street, but also in other places that...
You want me to become a director, right? So that I can sit in the office and sign papers?
No, Grandma, I'm not asking you to give up your tea parties and rocking chair, but you could be the face of the foundation. People love you, they listen to you, and I'll take care of the organizational part.
It's the face of the foundation, you say? That sounds good, but do you realize that this is a huge job, my boy? Are you ready for this?
Yes, I am. We've already done so much, Grandma. This project has helped not only me, but also many people around us. Now I want our work to become something more than just a family chronicle.
Well, Jamal, if you're ready, then I'm ready. But keep in mind, I will be your main critic. If you do something wrong, I will not be silent.
Agreed. I'm counting on your honesty.
After this conversation, Jamal began to make a plan of action. The first step was to create a foundation structure. He carefully considered what services the organization would be able to offer: digitization and restoration of old photographs, assistance in compiling family trees, conducting interviews with elderly family members to record their memories. Each of these tasks required skills, resources, and time. Jamal turned to his friends for support, many of whom liked the idea. One of them, Kevin, was a professional photographer and agreed to help with the restoration of the pictures. Another friend, Sarah, worked as a historian and offered to help with archiving and creating chronological descriptions. Gradually, the team began to form.
You know, Jamal, I've been wanting to do something meaningful for a long time. I have so many old films at home that I have restored for myself. If I can help others preserve their family memory, it will be the best reward for me.
You have no idea how grateful I am to you for this, Kevin. We're starting small, but who knows where this will lead us.
Jamal, this album is all that's left of my grandmother. If it weren't for people like you, I would never have known who she was. So I don't just want to help, I have to do it.
Then let's start together. We will create something that will live long after us.
The next stage was to attract financing. Jamal organized a small presentation where he told local businessmen and representatives of the city administration about his idea. He showed the results of the exhibition and the book Voices of Jackson Street to demonstrate how valuable a stored memory can be. The presentation was attended by Mabel herself, who captivated the audience with her charm and sharp mind.
Many of you know me. I've lived on Jackson Street for most of my life, and I can tell you that there is nothing more important than remembering where you came from. This foundation is not just my grandson's project. This is a way to preserve our roots and pass them on to our children and grandchildren. Think about it.
Her words touched the audience, and Jamal was able to enlist the support of several sponsors. This was the beginning of a new stage in their project. The foundation, which they called Roots and Crowns, began its work with several small projects. They helped restore the family archive of an elderly couple, conducted interviews with a World War II veteran, and digitized dozens of photographs that might otherwise have been lost forever. With each successful project, the foundation gained popularity. People came not only for help, but also to share their stories. Mabel has become a kind of mentor for visitors, inspiring them to open up and talk about their past.
Darling, don't be afraid to tell your story. Everything you've been through is part of your strength, and you're not alone. We are all here to support each other.
For Jamal, the foundation became not only the realization of his dream, but also a way to continue the work he started with his grandmother. Every day, he saw how their efforts changed people's lives, and it gave him the strength to move on. The Roots and Crowns Foundation became not just an organization, but a movement that reminded people of the value of family memory and the power of history. Jamal got the idea to organize a cultural festival on Jackson Street during one of his working evenings. Sitting at the table in the living room, he sorted through the photos that the neighbors had brought and felt that this was not enough. There was a story in every picture, and every story deserved to be heard. But the stories and photographs remained scattered. Then it occurred to him, why not get everyone together? A festival dedicated to the history and culture of their area could be a way to bring people together, remind them of the value of their past, and inspire them to preserve their memory.
Grandma, what if we do something like a party on Jackson Street? Something big where everyone can tell their story, show their photos, or even cook a family meal. It will bring people together, won't it?
Do you want to have a festival? Here? On our old street? My boy, do you understand what this means? People, noise, music, children who will turn the whole yard upside down? Are you ready for this?
Yes, I'm ready. This is how I see it. An exhibition of photographs, musical performances, master classes, even a culinary corner where you can try old family recipes. It's not just going to be a celebration, it's going to be a whole event.
You're so fired up with this idea that I can't even say no. Okay, I'll support you, but keep in mind, I'm not going to run after kids who steal my lemonade.
Agreed, you will be our guest of honor. And also, Grandma, you're going to have to tell a couple of stories. People want to hear from you.
Oh, Jamal, do you want me to perform? Okay, but only if you make me tea before the start.
Jamal immediately started the organization. The first step was to coordinate with the local administration. He prepared a presentation explaining that the festival would be dedicated to the cultural and historical values of their area. The city authorities enthusiastically embraced his idea, allocating a small grant to organize the event. The next step was to work with the neighbors. Jamal, along with friends and volunteers, toured every house on Jackson Street, explaining the concept of the festival. He invited people to participate, bring vintage photos, share recipes, tell stories. Some were skeptical of the idea at first, but Jamal's enthusiasm infected many. A festival, you say? What can I bring there? I only have old magazines and a couple of pots from my great-grandmother left.
That's wonderful, Mrs. Green. These pots could have been part of your family's history. You can tell us how your ancestors cooked their dishes and even show it to people.
Maybe it's really worth a try. I have an old pie recipe that was passed down in our family. But do you promise that the children won't eat everything while I'm looking away?
I promise. I will personally protect them.
Gradually, the whole area began to prepare. People took out old things, wrote stories, rehearsed songs, and cooked dishes. Jackson Street came alive. It seemed that every house was suddenly filled with energy and expectation of something big. The day of the festival turned out to be sunny. The street was decorated with garlands, tables were placed along the sidewalk, each with antique objects, photographs and dishes. In one corner, children were painting under the guidance of volunteers. In the other, live music played by local musicians. Mabel was sitting in her rocking chair outside the house, watching everything with a smile.
You see, Jack, our boy did it. I never thought he would be able to bring so many people together.
Well, he took after Grandma, that's for sure. And what are you going to tell me, Mabel?
Wait, Jack, you'll find out everything, but first, I want to try that Mrs. Green pie.
The center of the festival was a stage where everyone could perform and tell the story of their family. People shared memories of how their ancestors moved to Jackson Street, how they struggled with difficulties and built their homes. The stories were filled with laughter, tears, and pride.
Risa first moved here, it was a completely different street. The houses were modest and life was simple, but each house had its own story, its own struggle, and its own love. Today, I see that this street is not just a place where we live. This is our past, our present, and our future.
People applauded, some wiped away tears. For many, it was not just an event, but a real lesson about how important it is to remember your roots. The festival was a huge success. Jamal was amazed by the number of people who came to share their stories. People thanked him for the opportunity to remember and show their culture. Some families who had not communicated for a long time reunited at this festival.
Grandma, it was incredible. Did you see how people reacted? They shared their stories, laughed, cried. I didn't even expect it to elicit such a response.
That's because you reminded them that their stories are important. No one wants to be forgotten, Jamal. You gave them a chance to be heard.
The festival has become not only a celebration but also the beginning of new projects. After the success of the event, Jamal decided to make such meetings annual. The festival helped people realize the value of their family stories and inspired many to start recording their memories and preserving antique objects. It was a day that united everyone on Jackson Street, a day that showed how the power of memory can inspire and connect generations. After successfully organizing a cultural festival on Jackson Street, Jamal felt that he had not only strengthened ties in the community, but also moved closer to reconnecting with his own family. The festival became a catalyst that began to unite relatives who had long dispersed to different cities and countries. Jamal realized that their stories, preserved in the family chronicle, could become the bridge that would connect them again. Jamal's family was big, but over the years they began to lose touch with each other. Many have moved to different states, and some have moved outside the country. Disagreements, misunderstandings, and just life circumstances have alienated them. But the exhibition, the festival, and Jamal's efforts inspired relatives to return to their roots. Many of them saw the photos, heard the stories that Jamal and Mabel had saved, and started writing and calling, expressing gratitude for preserving their family memory. Jamal started receiving calls from his aunts, uncles, and cousins. Some told how the festival inspired them to search for their old albums. Others, how they want to participate in the further preservation of family history. Jamal felt that this was the first step towards a reunion. Realizing that talking on the phone was not enough, Jamal offered to arrange a big family meeting on Jackson Street. He understood that it would not be easy. It was necessary to find the right time, take into account the opinions and schedules of dozens of people. But Jamal didn't give up. Together with Mabel, he made a list of all the relatives they could remember and began writing a letter to each of them. The letters were sincere and warm. In each of them, Jamal talked about the work done, how their family history comes to life through photographs and stories, and how important it is to keep this connection. He invited them to Jackson Street, where they could not only meet, but also continue working on the family chronicle, adding new chapters. The answers started coming quickly. Some immediately agreed to come, some expressed doubts, but most were touched and intrigued. Even those who had not communicated with the family for years showed interest. Jamal and Mabel were diligently preparing for the big event. The house on Jackson Street, which had already become a cultural center for neighbors, was now supposed to host dozens of relatives. They had vacated the living room to accommodate photographs, albums, and items from the family archive. Large tables were set up in the courtyard, decorated with flowers and simple but stylish fabrics. A corner with games was organized for children and a zone for memories for adults, where they could sit over a cup of tea and talk. Mabel insisted on making the kitchen come alive again. She decided to cook several traditional dishes that once united their family at the same table. She remembered the recipes her mother had made and shared them with Jamal. For her, it wasn't just cooking. It was an act of passing on traditions. The long-awaited day has arrived. Relatives started arriving in the morning. Many of them haven't been to Jackson Street in decades. They looked with surprise and awe at the house, which, despite its age, remained warm and cozy, as if inviting them to return to their childhood. The meeting began with a short tour of the house. Jamal showed photographs, told the stories he had recorded, and showed off new discoveries made in recent months. The relatives laughed, remembering their childhood years, discussed how they had changed, and shared memories that they themselves had kept in their hearts for a long time. For many, it was not just a reunion with their family, but also with their own past. One of Jamal's aunts, Laura, brought an old album that she found in her basement. There were photos in it that no one had ever seen. She cried, telling how these pictures reminded her of her father, who died when she was still a child. The cousins, who had not spoken for many years due to a long-standing conflict, sat down at the same table. Under the influence of the general atmosphere, they began to talk for the first time in a long time. The older family members shared stories that they had previously kept to themselves. Some talked about the difficulties they had overcome, others about the joys that had now become part of their common history. The meeting also became an opportunity to work on a family chronicle. Jamal put a large table in a prominent place, with blank pages on which everyone could write their story, add a photo, or just share their thoughts. Some brought letters and documents that they had kept for a long time to add to the general archive. Jamal was most touched by how people began to see themselves as part of something bigger. Everyone realized that their stories are important, that they are not just individuals, but parts of a single family tree that continues to grow. The family meeting on Jackson Street was a turning point for the whole family. People who had moved away a long time ago and forgot about their roots felt like part of one big story again. Relatives who had not communicated for years began to reconnect. The younger generation saw how important it is to know their history and respect those who came before them. For Jamal, this was proof that his efforts were not in vain. He not only helped to preserve the memory of the past, but also inspired the family to take new steps. Now their story continued to live not only in the annals, but also in the hearts of the people who were a part of it. The family reunion was a confirmation for Jamal and Mabel that their work matters. They saw how stored memory can not only inspire, but also unite. It was a day that changed their family forever, filling it with new powers and new stories that continued to be created. After the family meeting, which was the emotional culmination of the last few months, Jamal felt inspired like never before. He finally realized that his work is not just self-expression, but also a way to preserve the memory of what is really important. This idea became the starting point for his new series of paintings, which was called The Echo of Generations. Looking through the photos and recordings taken at the festival and the family meeting, Jamal noticed how unique and, at the same time, universal the stories that people shared. Each photo, each story had its own depth: pride, pain, joy, overcoming. These emotions became for him the material that he wanted to transfer to the canvas. He saw how the past and the present intertwine in people's destinies, how memories shape their lives. Jamal decided that his next series of paintings would be dedicated to these moments, the connections between generations, the invisible threads that connect us with our ancestors. His works were supposed to be not just visual images, but real emotional journeys. Jamal started with the preparation. He took out old notebooks where he had once made sketches and began to restudy artistic techniques in order to express his ideas most vividly. Inspiration was all around him: photographs, stories of his family and neighbors, objects he found in attics or in boxes on Jackson Street. Every detail filled his plans with meaning. His first work, which he called Intertwined Roots, was based on a family tree that he and his grandmother had been working on for several months. Jamal depicted a huge tree rooted in the ground. There was something symbolic in each bark and each leaf: the faces of ancestors, images of old houses, objects that were passed down from generation to generation. The work turned out to be so detailed that viewers could spend hours looking at it, finding new details. After the first picture, Jamal realized that he wanted to delve into the topic of emotions related to memory. His next work, Echo of Voices, was dedicated to people who told their stories at the festival. There were abstract silhouettes on the canvas, surrounded by waves, like a sound coming from the past. Each wave reflected the memories, the voices, of the ancestors that continued to resound in our lives. This work aroused special emotions in Jamal. He realized how important words and stories are, how they shape our perception of the world. For him, this painting became not only a work of art, but also a way to express his gratitude to everyone who shared their stories. Each painting in the series was unique, not only in its plot, but also in its color scheme. Jamal used bright and saturated colors to depict joy and success, and warmer, earthy shades for those paintings that dealt with loss and struggle. His palette spoke no less than the images themselves. He wanted the viewer to feel the energy of these stories through color and texture. One of his most significant works was the painting Fragments of Memory. It was an abstract composition in which the elements of memories, old photographs, letters, objects, seemed to fly to pieces, but at the same time formed into a new integral image. The painting symbolized how our perception of the past is formed from many fragments that we keep in our memory. When Jamal started showing his work to friends and neighbors, he was amazed by their reaction. When people found their own stories reflected in his paintings, they said that his works make them think about their ancestors, about how their lives are connected with the past. Sarah, his friend and historian, offered to organize an exhibition to share this series with a wide audience. Jamal was hesitant at first, but then agreed. He realized that his paintings are not just art. They are a way to inspire people to appreciate their history. The preparation for the exhibition was the next stage of his work. Jamal carefully selected the paintings, compiled a description for each of them so that the audience could understand its meaning. He decided to name the exhibition the same way as the series, Echo of Generations. This name perfectly reflected its essence, how the past resonates in the present. The exhibition was planned at a local gallery, but thanks to the support of the Roots and Crowns Foundation, its format was expanded. In addition to the paintings, the exhibition was planned to show videos with the stories of people whose stories inspired Jamal. This added interactivity and made the exhibition an even deeper experience. For the exhibition, Jamal decided to create a central work that would combine all the themes of the series. He called it Streams of Time. On a huge canvas, he depicted rivers that cross each other, symbolizing generations. On each river, there were images of people, events, and objects that played a key role in the transmission of heritage. This painting became the most difficult in his career. He worked on it for several months, adding details that were supposed to tell the viewer that memory is not something static, but a living stream that continues to flow through us. The opening day of the exhibition was an important event not only for Jamal, but also for the entire community. People came to see paintings that reflected their own stories. Many brought their children to show them the importance of preserving memory. The painting's Streams of Time caused a special delight. People found echoes of their own memories in it. Some cried, looking at her because she reminded them of loved ones who were no longer there. The exhibition not only strengthened Jamal's connection with his community, but also helped to draw attention to the importance of preserving family histories. Many visitors were inspired by his work and began recording their memories, searching for old photos and sharing them with loved ones. For Jamal, this was a confirmation that his work is important. He saw how his art could inspire, unite, and heal. Each painting from the Echo of Generations series has become a symbol of how memory continues to live in and through us. The creation of the Echo of Generations series was not just a stage in Jamal's career, but also an act of deep research into human memory. His paintings became a visual chronicle that connected the past and the present. The exhibition strengthened him as an artist and storyteller, making his work significant not only for the local community, but also for a wider audience. After the success of the Echo of Generations series and an exhibition held at a local gallery, Jamal suddenly found himself in the spotlight of a wide audience. His works, steeped in history, memory, and family ties, resonated with audiences far beyond Jackson Street. However, Jamal himself did not immediately realize the scale of what was happening. His attention was focused on continuing his work, but the wave of interest in his art had already begun to gain momentum. After the end of the exhibition at a local gallery, the organizers offered Jamal to send his works to a competition in one of the largest national art platforms. It was an annual competition dedicated to contemporary art, where artists from all over the country presented their work to gain recognition and support. Jamal hesitated for a long time. It seemed to him that his works, based on personal stories, might not be interesting enough for a wide audience. But his grandmother Mabel and friends convinced him to try. He sent several key paintings from the Echo of Generations series, including Intertwined Roots and Streams of Time. A few weeks later, a letter came with the news. His works were selected, and he became one of the participants in the exhibition at the largest art center in the country. For Jamal, it was an unexpected but inspiring event. When Jamal received confirmation that his work would be presented at the national exhibition, he realized that he had to approach this with special attention. His paintings now not only symbolized his own history, but also represented his community and family in front of a wide audience. He began to refine his work, adding details and making small changes to better convey his idea. He also prepared explanatory texts for each painting so that the audience could better understand its context. To do this, he turned back to the family chronicle, drawing inspiration from the stories of his grandmother and other relatives. His neighbors and friends actively supported him, helping him prepare for the trip. Someone helped arrange the transportation of paintings, someone wrote letters of support, and some just came to cheer him up before an important event. Jackson Street rallied around Jamal, proud that their story would now become nationally known. The opening day of the exhibition at the Art Center was exciting for Jamal. His paintings were placed in a spacious hall where light and composition emphasized every detail of his work. In addition to the audience, critics, curators, and famous artists were present at the exhibition. When the first visitors began to approach his paintings, Jamal stood aside, watching their reactions. He was amazed at how people looked at the details, discussed them among themselves, and asked questions. His works evoked a variety of emotions from the audience. Someone smiled, remembering their family traditions. Someone stood with a thoughtful look, and some even cried. The painting's Streams of Time aroused particular interest. People found something personal about her, even if they had never heard of Jackson Street. It was a universal work that spoke about memory, about generations, and about the connection between them. A few days after the opening of the exhibition, Jamal began to receive the first reviews. Critics have praised his work, noting its emotional depth, sincerity, and attention to detail. An article appeared in one of the famous art magazines with the headline, "The Voice of Memory: How Jamal Mason Preserves History Through Art." The article emphasized that his works are unique in that they combine personal stories with universal themes that are understandable to everyone. His social media began to fill up quickly with messages from people who had seen his paintings. They wrote how his work inspired them to explore their own roots, restore family ties, or simply reflect on the importance of memory. Some viewers even sent their old photos and told their family stories, inspired by his example. The success of the exhibition opened up many opportunities for Jamal. His works attracted the attention of curators from other cities who wanted to show them in their galleries. He began receiving invitations to participate in group and solo exhibitions all over the country. One of these exhibitions was an exposition dedicated to the connection of generations, which was held in New York. There, Jamal presented a new work created specifically for this exhibition. The painting, called The Thread of Time, depicted Mabel's grandmother in the center, surrounded by images of her ancestors and descendants. This work became not only a tribute to his grandmother, but also a symbol of how she inspired him to do everything he does. As his popularity grew, Jamal realized that his mission was not only to create art, but also to teach. He began to participate in educational projects, talking about how important it is to preserve family memory. His masterclasses, where he taught how to create visual stories, became popular among young people and adults. One of the most significant projects was the cooperation with the Roots and Crowns Foundation. Together with a team of like-minded people, Jamal began organizing events where people could bring their family photos and stories to create unique art objects from them. This project not only popularized his work, but also helped people to better understand the value of their own heritage. Despite his success and busy schedule, Jamal never forgot about his roots. After each exhibition and project, he returned to Jackson Street to be with his grandmother and family. For him, this place remained a source of inspiration and strength. On Jackson Street, he continued to work on new projects, looking for inspiration in simple but meaningful things. Conversations with neighbors, old letters, stories from his grandmother. Every time he returned, he felt that his work was just beginning. Reaching the national level was not just a career achievement for Jamal, but also an opportunity to share his vision of the world with a huge number of people. His art, based on personal and family stories, proved that even the most local themes can become universal. Now he felt that his mission was not only to create art, but also to inspire people to remember, appreciate, and pass on their history. After Jamal's work gained national recognition, he began to think about how his success could serve not only for self-realization, but also to inspire others. The inspiration for this idea, as always, was Mabel. Her wisdom, energy, and contribution to the preservation of their family history prompted Jamal to think that it was necessary to create something more durable, a project that would help people preserve their roots and pass them on to the next generations. During one of his visits to Jackson Street, Jamal spent a lot of time thinking about how his art had changed other people's lives. His exhibitions and projects inspired many people to start exploring their family histories, but he realized that for many it was still a difficult process. There is often not enough knowledge, resources, or support to collect and preserve the family legacy. Then he decided that the next stage of his mission would be to create a foundation that would help people across the country explore their roots, preserve them, and turn them into art. Jamal called this project the Roots and Crowns Foundation, emphasizing the symbolism of the tree. The roots are the past, and the crown is the future, which grows thanks to these roots. Jamal and his team started by planning the foundation's structure. He decided that the main areas of activity would be 1. Educational programs, conducting master classes and seminars dedicated to the preservation of family history. These could be lessons on digitizing old photographs, recording the memories of the older generation, or creating art projects based on family stories. 2. Grants support. The provision of small grants for families or communities who want to preserve their history but do not have the necessary funds for this, for example, to restore old photos, record interviews, or publish a family book. 3. Creation of archives. Assistance in creating local archives where residents could save their family documents, photographs, and stories. 4. Holding exhibitions and events. Organizing exhibitions like those that Jamal did to show how history can be transformed into art. 5. Interactive platforms. The development of online resources where people could share their stories and find inspiration in the experiences of others. The launch of the Roots and Crowns Foundation was an important event for Jamal and Mabel. They held an official opening at the house on Jackson Street, which became the symbolic center of this project. The event brought together friends, relatives, and community representatives who saw how Jamal's ideas changed their lives. The opening day included an exhibition of Jamal's work, stories about the foundation's creation process, and a live recording of Mabel's memories. This event marked the beginning of a new stage in their lives. The people who came to the opening immediately began to share their ideas and stories, offering cooperation and support. One of the Foundation's first projects was the Living Memories Initiative. It was a tour in which the Foundation's team traveled to small towns and villages, holding meetings with local residents. They recorded their memories, collected old photographs and documents, and helped compile family trees. This project quickly gained popularity. People thanked the Foundation for the opportunity to save their stories. Some even learned details about their ancestors for the first time through such meetings. This strengthened Jamal's confidence that he had chosen the right path. Another important initiative of the foundation was the creation of a traveling exhibition, Voices of Roots. This exhibition included Jamal's paintings, photographs, and objects collected as part of the Living Memories project. The exhibition traveled to different cities, attracting more and more attention and provoking a positive response. The activities of the Roots and Crowns Foundation began to have a profound impact on people. Families that had long lost touch with each other began to rebuild their relationships. The younger generation, inspired by the Foundation's projects, became interested in the history of their ancestors. Many children and teenagers have started creating their own family albums, painting pictures, or writing stories inspired by Jamal's work. In some cities, local authorities, inspired by the success of the foundation, began to support the creation of local archives and museums. Jamal has received numerous invitations to speak at heritage preservation events, where he shared his experiences and inspired others. Over time, the fund began to grow. Jamal's team was joined by professional historians, archivists, artists, and organizers. They helped to develop new areas of the foundation's activities, including the creation of educational programs for schools. Teachers used these materials to teach children about the importance of preserving family history. The foundation also began to cooperate with major museums and galleries, which provided their own venues for exhibitions and seminars. This helped to draw attention to the topic of heritage conservation at the national level. For Jamal, the foundation has become not just a professional achievement, but also a personal mission. He saw how his work helps people feel connected to their past and understand themselves better. Each new project of the foundation reminded him of how his grandmother inspired him to do all this. For Mabel, the foundation has become a symbol of her legacy. She was proud that her stories, her life, had become the basis for something so meaningful. She gladly continued to participate in the foundation's projects, met with people, and talked about her experience. Her wisdom and strength of spirit inspired everyone who communicated with her. The creation of the Roots and Crowns Foundation was the culmination of all Jamal and Mabel's efforts. This project combined their family history, Jamal's work, and their desire to help others preserve their roots. The foundation has become not only a way to inspire people, but also an important tool for preserving cultural heritage. For Jamal and Mabel, it was a way to show that memory is not just memories. It is a force that can unite generations, inspire creativity, and give people a sense of belonging. Their story, which began with a small house on Jackson Street, became an example of how loving your past can change lives. Years have passed since the foundation of the Roots and Crowns Foundation. His activities have spread to many regions, turning into a national movement for the preservation of family histories. But for Jamal and Mabel, it wasn't just a professional achievement. It became a life's work that united them, their family, and their community. The house on Jackson Street remained the center of their world, where everything began and where everything returned. Jackson Street has long ceased to be just a quiet street in a small town. Thanks to the foundation's work, this area has become a place known far beyond their city. The museum at Mabel's house attracted visitors from all over the country. People came to see not only Jamal's paintings, but also to get to know the story that inspired him. Mabel and Jamal themselves continued to live a busy life. Despite her age, Mabel remained active and energetic. She became an honorary consultant to the foundation, helping new teams organize archives and conduct educational programs. Her wisdom and charisma made her a favorite of the public, and she was happy to share her stories at numerous meetings. For Jamal, the foundation became not only a way to express his gratitude to his grandmother, but also an opportunity to pass on her legacy to a new generation. He continued to paint, creating new works inspired not only by the past, but also by the present. His paintings became increasingly mature, complex, and symbolic, reflecting both personal and social changes. Jamal's family began to take an increasingly active part in the foundation's activities. Their children, Mabel's great-grandchildren, spent summers at her house, helping at the mosaics, decorating paintings, and learning to resay with better clippers. Jamal's family began to take an increasingly active part in the foundation's activities. Jamal's family began to release. Mabel's great-granddaughter, 16-year-old Tiana, stood out in particular. The girl showed great interest in art and history. She often watched Jamal work, asking questions about the process of creating his paintings and the meaning of his work. Seeing her enthusiasm, Jamal began to teach her the basics of painting, sharing his knowledge and experience. Tiana became part of a new generation that recognized the importance of its roots. She began creating her own works inspired by Mabel's stories. Her style was fresh, modern, but there was a deep connection with tradition in it. Jamal was proud that she was adopting his mission, but at the same time contributing something of her own. The Roots and Crowns Foundation continued to grow. Jamal decided that the next step would be to expand educational programs to reach young people. He developed a project called Roots of the Future, which included educational programs for schools and colleges. These programs help young people to study their family history and express it through art. One of the most successful initiatives was the Let's Remember Together program. Its essence was for the older generation to share their memories with young people, and they, in turn, turned these stories into art projects. Exhibitions created within the framework of this program were held throughout the country, causing delight among the audience and participants. The foundation has also started cooperation with major museums and educational organizations. Thanks to this, the foundation's projects have attracted international attention. In one of the articles dedicated to the foundation, he was called an example of how history can be preserved and reinterpreted through creativity. Despite their success and recognition, Jamal and Mabel never forgot about their home on Jackson Street. This place remained for them a symbol of their history and the beginning of their journey. They regularly organized family gatherings and events for neighbors, maintaining the spirit of the community. One summer evening, sitting on the porch, Mabel looked thoughtfully at the starry sky. She knew her life was nearing its end, but she felt proud of everything she and Jamal had achieved. The house on Jackson Street was no longer just a place where she had lived her life. It has become a symbol of memory, hope, and love. She shared her thoughts with Jamal, saying she was ready to hand over the house to him and the next generation. It was a touching moment for Jamal. He promised to keep the house the way Mabel had always known it and continue their business. A few months later, Jamal organized an event at the house on Jackson Street, which he called The Legacy of Light. It was an evening exhibition where the paintings, photographs, and archives of the family were illuminated with soft light, creating an atmosphere of warmth and comfort. The event attracted many guests, including both old family friends and new fans of their work. At the end of the evening, Jamal presented a new work, which he called The Light of the Roots. It was a huge painting depicting a tree with shining leaves, each of which symbolized a story told by him or the foundation. The painting caused a storm of applause and became the center of attention of the exhibition. For Mabel, this event was an important moment. She saw her dreams of preserving memory come true and felt that her mission was accomplished. She knew that Jamal, Tiana, and other members of their family would continue her work. Jamal, in turn, felt responsible for continuing their work. He understood that Mabel's legacy was not just stories and paintings. This is the spirit of unity and love that should live on in the next generations. The story of Jamal and Mabel marked the beginning of a new phase for their family and community. The house on Jackson Street continued to live, filled with laughter, conversation, and creativity. The foundation's work has spread throughout the country, inspiring people to preserve their history. But most importantly, the legacy of Mabel and Jamal has become an example of how loving your past can be a source of strength, inspiration, and change. Their story reminded us that memory is not just memories, but a living stream that connects us to our roots and helps us grow.